what epigenetics is? Somebody want to say?
Isn't it basically part of our gene code that is changeable? So most of it is kind of set from birth, but then parts of it can change based off of our beliefs, environment, actions, stuff like that.
Yeah, and like the hormones and chemicals in your body, which, as Gabby has said, cortisol has a big impact on cancer and infection and resistance disease. So that's exactly right, Jordan. Epigenetics is a very modern branch of science, which is basically in disagreement with hundreds of years of people saying that our genes determine our destiny and that our brain stops developing after X number of years. So neuroplasticity is kind of the psychological correlate to epigenetics, right? So we're 30 years ago, if you went to university to study psychology, they would say your brain stops developing at 25 or 30 and your genes determine your destiny. But now it's not the same. So we really are on the brink, on the cutting edge of something completely new, which is we are in the era of um, neuroplasticity, which means your neurology, your mental capacity can change based on all kinds of things, education, conditioning, environment, etc. Similarly, your genes are subject to change. So sometimes we're thinking, oh, this is a behavioral thing that we're doing with hypnosis. Not so. It's much more interesting than that. What we're saying is by affecting and conditioning how a person thinks, we can change who they are on the level of their identity. That's very important because it's generational. Now, the next person doesn't pick up the same compulsion, doesn't pick up the same trauma. So I'm not making a medical claim. I'm not allowed to do that, but I am saying that my claim is getting bigger and bigger than it was in the first few trainings, which is, yes, I can help people quit addiction. Yes, I can help people overcome their trauma and their depression. But more importantly, I feel like what we're doing is having a real impact on the collective consciousness and on who people are. I mean, out of the 300 or 340 people that I have treated so far, think of all of the people they've touched, their kids, their spouses, their bosses. So we're into the thousands already. Those thousands of people also affect thousands of people. So you're very important. This is a very important role, and it's a revolutionary role, and it's something that is much bigger than, oh, I'm going to help this person, not pick up their cigarettes, upgrading the human race. Yes, Felix. So again, when you're wondering why can I charge for this, that's why. As you know, hypnosis has not always been this way. It has not always been a conversational method that is aimed at this epigenetic change. There's been lots of things historically. I studied Plato and the ancient Greeks. There's even a story in Herodotus of, I think it's Herodotus, maybe I'm wrong about that, but of somebody going into like a sleep cave, they called it, and somebody whispers in their ear and they come out of the sleep cave, changed. So the suggestion method is the historical method of like, I heard something while I was calm. I heard something while I was asleep, and it stuck with me. We're now upgrading from the sleep method, from the suggestion method, because suggestion is not therapy. Suggestion is not therapeutic. The modern mind has now figured out ways to make complex problems exist because the subconscious is basically bored and doesn't have its old problems to deal with, like survival. So now it's come up with new problems. And bottom line is there needs to be a new technology to deal with that. So what we're doing here is not suggestion. It's not old school, like when you calm down, I'll tell you some things that I think will help you. No, it's much more interesting than that. It's like, let me find out from you what the source of the problem is or what the map towards the problem is. And from that, something will happen. So we're upgrading from that traditional model. The main influence on this conversational model is Milton Erickson. You guys all know who Milton Erickson is, the grandfather, great grandfather of modern hypnosis. He was infected with polio as a child, so he was unable to move during that period of time. He did a lot of observation, right? Because he couldn't move and he was highly intelligent. So he did things like find out, all the ways you can say no with your subconscious. And he would just study that. So he became a really intuitive reader of the subconscious. And what is cool about studying Erickson, which unfortunately we have very little footage of him and very little recordings, but if you do observe it, which I encourage you to do, check it out on YouTube, you'll see that no two sessions are alike. Sometimes he's doing metaphor, sometimes he's doing suggestion, sometimes he's having a conversation, just like we're doing. It looks exactly the same. Sometimes he's having someone close their eyes and do traditional. What's interesting about it is not the method, it's the fact that he's able to read the client and decide based on that. So the naturalness and the organicness and the extemporaneousness, which means the right nowness, is the cool thing that we're interpret or inheriting from Erickson and importing into our modern conversational technology.